some big news that you essentially called here on this podcast. The Calgary Flames were in a huge rut. Things were not turning around. So what did they do? They fired head coach Jeff Ward. And who did they bring in, Michael Lepore? They just picked a coach off the coaching carousel, and in comes Darryl Sutter. Good old farmer Darryl Sutter coming from his ranch in northern Alberta to come save the Calgary Flames. And, you know, we see this all the time, and it's not just in the NHL, Lepore. We see it especially in the NFL. The same coaches just keep getting recycled, the same general managers year after year. So I got to hear your thoughts, man. What's your take on this Darryl Sutter hiring by the Calgary Flames?
My initial reaction when I saw that Darryl Sutter was hired was, give me a break. Of all the coaches you could have hired, Darryl Sutter. It's just so predictable, I guess it is like the way to put it, both in the way of like someone getting recycled and Darryl Sutter coaching the Calgary Flames. Like, could you be less creative? Could you have thought less about this? You just put your brain on an arrow and pointed to like the most obvious thing and chose that. And specifically to Darryl Sutter. Darryl Sutter, and again, it's not about his age specifically, but it was funny that them talking, and we talked about it before the show started, about the interview with Treliving. And he was talking about how like his relatability to the players. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for an older person to be able to relate to younger people, but Darryl Sutter is in his 60s. Okay. And when I mention his age, it's not because he's old and he can't do the job. I'm just pointing to how long this guy's been coaching, and the game has changed. The sport has changed drastically. And to the point about how long he's been coaching, his first coaching job was with the Chicago Blackhawks in 92-93. That's almost 30 years ago, Bruno. Jeremy Roenick was a young stud on those teams. And that's when Darryl Sutter started coaching in the National Hockey League. His last time coaching was 2017 with the LA Kings. Now, he got his cups. I mean, we all know that. Those teams were juggernauts. I mean, people sometimes point to coaches and say, well, any coach could have won with that team. But then I'll respond and say, well, tell me a coach that won with a bad team. So I'm not specifically circling that winning or losing to Sutter. But just to point, the guy hasn't coached in 4 years. And there were all those rumblings about how much he was hated before he was let go there. I remember hearing the story about how they locked him out of the change room. They were saying that they set up garbage cans to keep him out. It was a total embarrassment. And LA was just in a rut. Like, they came off those 2 cups. They looked so bad those few years following, where it really looked like the organization was on the way down. And now you have the Calgary Flames giving this guy another shot. Like you said, it's that carousel. Guys, like when Laviolette gets fired from his job, where's he going to go next? There were rumblings earlier this year about Tortorella and the Jackets organization not being happy with him. Well, if he gets let go, he's going to get another job. Why? Because as I say, he's a hockey man and he has experience. And they point to these guys, oh, he won a Stanley Cup. At what point does success no longer become relevant? Because it's so long ago and the game has changed. I mean, what I find so weird about hockey is that, and you mentioned it happens in football, but like sports in general, but I want to see more of the story of the guy who is coaching in the CHL and has an unbelievable record and turns a team around. Or I even follow a little bit of NCAA hockey, like more guys who coach college programs. And there's an argument that coaching a college program in any sport is a harder job because you have to recruit. You're essentially the GM. You have to watch over these kids. And at that level, there's NHL talent. A lot of these guys come out of the NCAA into the NHL. So why don't you hear that? Why don't you hear, oh, the Calgary Flames are looking at the head coach of North Dakota for their job, or Notre Dame or Yale, who won a national championship of years? You never hear that, or you rarely hear that, I should say. It's always some guy who's already coached. And even when you see it on TSN Sportsnet, ex-coach gets fired, who are they considering? And it's the same list of guys who we see over and over again who've coached before. And it seems like once you get in, you're almost like It's like you have
you're
like
guaranteed a job for life.
yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like you're granted like a membership card in the way that like you can now coach forever in the National Hockey League because you've shown that you can do it once. It's or not even that you can do it, that you have done it. It's just weird. And I remember like listening to a football podcast, and then the guy made a great point saying, you don't want Belichick, you want the next Belichick is what you're looking for. Like, yeah, try to be creative, try to be smart. Like in today's world of sports, like things are different. It's analytics, it's metrics. It's not Rock'em Sock'em 4, which was when Sutter started coaching Chicago. It's just, to me, it's so hockey. Like I laugh with my friends all the time saying how much I love the sport of hockey, but how often I just point to the National Hockey League and laugh in the way that like, oh my God, can this just be any more predictable and funny? And it's kind of embarrassing, like in the sport of like, here's a sport like trying to be progressive, trying to be different. Analytics and metrics have come in full force in the last decade or so, and you hire Darryl Sutter. I don't know. And there is that thing in me now that's like, I hope they lose. I hope it just comes crumbling down and like, good. And Treliving, it's on you. Or, I mean, there's people above him in the ownership group or whatever. Maybe they influence this because they thought it would like be good for PR because he's Darryl Sutter and everyone loves him in Calgary. But come on, like, who gives a shit? Like, hire the person who's best for the job, not the guy who's coached before and everyone already like knows his face. Give me a break.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Lepore. I think it is the most NHL/hockey thing ever.
It's a joke,
hiring Darryl Sutter again. And, you know, we talk about the coaching carousel, and it's like you said, it's just so predictable. And even what happened in that Flames Oilers game on Saturday night, Darryl Sutter wasn't behind the bench. Yeah. He was technically, you know, the head coach, but he was at home, you know, in Northern Alberta on his farm watching the game on TV. And what happens? Milan Lucic drops the gloves and fights. Yeah. And then a few minutes later, Matthew Tkachuk gets into it with James Neal, drops the gloves. So now everyone on the team thinks they have to fight and show that they're the tough guy. So Darryl Sutter's going to like them and they're going to be in his good books. It's just complete bullshit.
Yeah.
It really
so
is.
And fake.
And listen, I'm not saying that Darryl Sutter can't do the job. Like, he's obviously won Stanley Cups. He's been a successful head coach in the National Hockey League in the past. But at some point, can these teams just look elsewhere? And, you know, I look to the National Football League, for example, kind of like you brought up. You look at a guy like Sean McVay, right? How, you know, proved himself year after year. You know, I think at one point he was like a tight ends coach. I could be wrong about that. Then he becomes an offensive coordinator. And you just saw how great his offensive mind was for the game of football, right? And then
I'm a 49ers fan, Bruno Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan, exact same thing, right? Like two just young stud coaches who just understand the game so well, know the X's and O's. They're not those rah-rah type of guys, right? They're just really smart football guys. And you see when they get an opportunity, they take their team to the Super Bowl, right? And you know, I think about the Toronto Maple Leafs because they're a team that is going down a different path because Brendan Shanahan, okay, who is quote unquote, Lepore, as you like to say, a hockey man or a hockey guy for that matter, he made the decision to move away from Lou Lamoriello when a lot of people thought that Lou Lamoriello was going to stick around here. And he said, nope, screw that. I'm going with 30-something-year-old Kyle Dubas. Okay. And a lot of people thought, oh, here we go. Whiz kid Kyle Dubas. He's an analytics nerd. He's not going to lead this team anywhere. Right now. He
makes me feel like such a failure. Anytime you go on Wikipedia and read what Kyle Dubas has accomplished in his short life, I feel like such a failure. But anyways, go on.
It's unbelievable. He's 35 years old right now, Lepore. People forget he's only 35 years old. And he's done some phenomenal things so far with this hockey team. Has he made some mistakes? Yes, of course he has. But he has done some really, really nice things in his short time as the general manager. And what did he do? He brought in his guy, Sheldon Keefe, who he went through wars with in the Ontario Hockey League with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, who he was then obviously teamed up with in the American Hockey League with the Toronto Marlies when they won a championship over there. And Sheldon Keefe is another guy. He's 40 years old, compared to a lot of these other coaches right now, he's relatively young as well. And this is his first head coaching job in the National Hockey League, right? And these are the things that I like to see. Take a chance on guys that have the talent, think about the game in a little bit of a different way, could maybe relate to some of these younger players a little bit more. And these are the things I think are just lacking right now in the National Hockey League and other sports for that matter. We have to stop just recycling the same head coaches and general managers. And again, just to, kind of reiterate what you were saying, Lepore, that's not us saying, anyone over X age shouldn't be coaching or shouldn't be a general manager anymore. That's not what we're talking about. But at some point, can we try something new? Especially if a guy like Darryl Sutter, who's been fired multiple times, who's been out of the game essentially for now 4 or 5 years. And I know he was with the Ducks, I think, as like a coaching advisor recently.
I didn't even know that. Oh, okay.
But it's even I think about even like John Gruden, right? With the Raiders, how this guy goes into broadcasting for a decade and then the Raiders throw him $100 million contract.
Yeah, they gave him $1 billion.
It's like, are you kidding me? This guy hasn't been, and I know he's been on Monday Night Football and he's talking to all these coaches and GMs and he stays up to date with everything. But it's like at some point, you got to look at these guys who have been out of the sport for that long. Like, can we not be a little bit more progressive and innovative here with some of the hires? So I'm right there with you, Lepore. It is the most predictable thing ever. I'm really not expecting anything great from this Flames team under Darryl Sutter. Like, I really don't think it's going to come down to coaching. Like, he can be all rah, all he wants. And Lucic and Kachuk could fight every game and try to be tough guys. But this team is not in the same tier as some of the other teams, especially in the Canadian division. When you look at the Leafs and the Jets, or even the Oilers for that matter, who have two of the best players in the world. So we'll see what happens with this Flames team, Lepore. But yeah, it's like you said, I really don't expect any great things under Darryl Sutter.
Yeah. No.
Well, I guess we could move on from there.
Yeah.
After that very spirited rant from the two of us.
Comment down below, Flames fans, by the way.
Oh, we would love to hear from you, Flames
Let's hear
fans.
it.
Please let us know.
I'd be so annoyed. I'd be so annoyed if I was a Flames fan right now. Just like, roll your eyes, give me a break. We hired so-and-so. Like, again, we can talk about it all day. Let's move on.